Welcome to the Susan Brender Show. It's all about you. Featuring shows on health and wellness, the performing arts, politics, and people who inspire you to be your very best. And now, here's Susan Brender.
I'm Susan Brender, and this is the Susan Brender Show. Today, my guest is D D Scott. She's an international best-selling author and writing and publishing coach. She has over 1 million books downloaded. Her 39 books in 7 genres have hit bestseller lists around the globe, including both Amazon and Barnes & Noble's Top 100. Now, she has a lot more to tell us, but before I do that, I'd like to introduce you to my co-host, and her name is Deidre.
Good afternoon, ladies. It's very nice to join the call. Dee Dee, welcome.
Thank you so much.
You know, Deidre, let me tell the audience a little bit about you. First of all, your whole name is Deidre Regal. You're a classically trained singer, dancer, pianist, and composer/conductor. You're a dynamic, evolving woman who has recently added author to her list of life accomplishments. Deidre's professional journey has taken her to Eastern Europe, Japan, Canada, and around the United States. And boy, does she have a lot to say. So I want to welcome my co-host, Deidre Regal.
And likewise, honored to have you on the show, Dee Dee. And Susan, thank you for the lovely send-off. And by the way, for those listening, Susan has quite a bio of her own as well. So 3 very wonderful ladies here today on our interview. And what a treat. What an absolute treat. So,
well, let's start with the first question, which is, what motivated you to start the Let Love Glow author services, Dee Dee? You know, how are you helping authors throughout their writing for publications journey?
Sure. I think for me, my journey itself started 18 years ago when the only option available for all of us, well, there really were no options. The only thing we could do was go the traditional publishing route, which meant that you kind of got into this little pattern of hurry and wait. And what I mean by that is that you were constantly, you had to get an agent first. You couldn't send anything to the big New York City publishers, or called the tradie pubs, or the big 6 as they were known back then, because there were about 6 great big ones such as Simon & Schuster, Harper Collins, Time Warner, that type of thing. You had to get an agent. The average agent journey took anywhere from 8 to 15 years. It took me 13 years to get a top agent. Then you hurried and waited some more, and it was a 3-year period after that of rewriting according to what each publisher wanted. And I was, lucky enough that my book that was good enough to get me the agent at the time made it to all the top editors' desks, but they each wanted something different based on last quarter's sales. So after 3 years of rewriting the book, and it really didn't even sound like my voice anymore, it had morphed into those editors' and publishers' voices, there was this little thing called the Amazon Kindle coming out. And I decided just at that point to kind of scrap the traditional publishing route, and I went straight as a self-published, which was a naughty word back then, and back then was around 2008 to 10, and I went and published straight with Amazon Kindle, and to this day I've been downloaded and sold over 1.2 million books, and I've never looked back, and published 39 on my own, and I'm now able to teach other authors how to do the same. Those same people like me that were just stuck in that never-ending loop now have other options, and I can take them straight to Amazon, straight to Barnes & Nobles, and straight to their readers.
That's unbelievable. Wow. I'm going to call Deidre to ask you a question, but on the other hand, I think it's very important that I tell you a little bit about this. Holden Caulfield, there was a movie about him, and when he started to write his short stories, and even then, of course, his Catcher in the Rye story, it took him absolutely years to get anything published. Now, we know how popular and how fantastic his books were, but it was very difficult for him, as well as for all the authors that I speak to, because they all say that they have to self-publish because the big companies don't do it for them. So what do you have to say about this, Dee Dee?
Well, I think it's just very true. It's very raw. It's very real, and it's unfortunate that it's like that. But you have to understand, too, that they're part of, big corporate America and corporate world, basically. And what that means to them is they look at spreadsheets on last quarter and the quarter before that, and what shareholders, because, they're all part of multimedia corporations. They're not just publishers anymore. They're wrapped up in, I used to work for HarperCollins, so I know that end of the business as well. And it's all big corporate, it's Fox News, it's Rupert Murdoch, it's, all the big publishers. And they just truly go with kind of what's on the list from last year and what seems to look good on paper there, and that's what they're after. They don't take chances on anything new. And if it doesn't quite fit in a box that they've already created, then they don't make room for that in their catalog. And, at this point, too, there's no need for a gatekeeper. Readers, have the ability we all sit on our couch in our pajamas with a cup of coffee or a glass of wine, and we have the world at our fingertips.
Mm-hmm.
I have a feeling that you know what comes up next in terms of a question, because listen to what she just said. She said they all of us, when we read, we sit in our pajamas and we just have the Kindles. We have all kinds of other ways to access books. I want you to ask Dee Dee a question that relates to that.
Well, Dee Dee, you've spoken very eloquently about what was, about losing yourself, losing your voice in writing, the hurry up and wait, the corporate America, and you have been able to circumvent that and bring that in well into the 21st century where you have your own voice. So you have really circumvented what was, and we're into what is now. So you're talking now about readers sitting on their sofa in their pajamas with a cup of coffee, glass of wine. And this is extremely powerful. In the world that we are living in now, what are you seeing as one of the primary issues facing today's authors and writers?
I think the primary issue is getting away from that stigma that, if you will, that unless you see your book on a Barnes & Noble shelf or a Borders or a Books A Million, and Borders is done, so Books A Million or Barnes & Nobles, and I'll predict that they're probably not going to be around much longer as well, because they don't, go to the couch. Nobody's getting out anymore and going to a bookstore and have, a limited amount you can spend that week on a book and looking there to find what they want to read. We have the luxury now, as we've talked about, of sitting on that couch. And here's the thing, too, because the price of an ebook, ideally, all the statistics show, and I know from my own research and the hundreds of authors I coach, that $2.99 is the magic price point. You could never go in a bookstore and buy something for $2.99. Now, the indies are different, and the indie stores are thriving, because they get the price points. They make it more of an experience in a coffee house and a culture than just commercially selling books. So what authors today or writers wanting to be authors have to understand is we have that magic ability now to take everything straight to the reader. And you do that on a device. You do that at a price where not only are they reading their favorite genres, so when you used to go to the bookstore, you had a limited budget. You would pick things that you've read before in that genre because you knew you'd like it, and you weren't very experimental in your reading because you couldn't afford to be. Now, all at once, as a writer, I write in 7 genres. Everyone I'm coaching writes in multiple genres. And why is that? Because readers now have the budget to read and try new things. And they're willing to do that. So all at once, you've got this captive audience, and you just have to understand, nobody, I always like to say this, nobody ever went into a bookstore and said, you know what, I think I'd like the next HarperCollins read, right? None of us ever did that. You go in and you ask, right, and you go in and you ask for the author you love or the genre you love or a book that you heard about from a friend. You never asked, you never cared whose, logo was on the side of the book, and chances are you didn't even know. So you got to get away from that stigma and realize that today's bookstore is on our cell phone, on our laptops, on our Kindles, on a tablet, and know that that's where you want to go because that's where your readers are.
Dee Dee and Deidre, I I don't know about you, but I remember my experiences at Barnes & Noble's. When I'd walk in, I could have coffee, I could read a book, I could be with people, I can learn so much from the bookstore because there were so many interesting books on the shelves. Now, I love that feeling of the book. You know, when you pick it up and you turn the pages, and there's something about that feeling that you just don't get with the technology that is now giving you the opportunity to read a book. I wonder what you think about this, Deidre, and what about you, Dee Dee?
I agree. There's something about having that tangible book in your hand, and I think what is very viable, and this goes to the question about challenges facing today's authors and writers, is we can publish a book both in soft or hardcover format, and that way we keep both sides of the audience happy. Dee Dee, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. What Amazon has single-handedly done, and it's really phenomenal, is we as self-published authors, we can choose the format, and they'll soon be coming out with hardback as well. So you can do an ebook, you can do a print book, you can do a hardback book, and not eliminate any of those worlds. So, of course, for me, I do a lot of public speaking, a lot of classes. So, yeah, there's instances where you're doing events like that where you definitely want a print or a hardback because there's your audience. They'd love a signed copy for their collection. It becomes a collectible. And, yeah, there's instances where you want that. But where you're going to thrive and really grow your readership is in that ebook world. So, ideally, you do a little bit of both. And that's the beauty of self-publishing is, so there's a third alternative. It's not just traditional and self-published. There's this middle person, so to speak. And again, I'm not saying that anything's right or wrong. It has to be right or wrong for you, and that's what I teach. But there's a ton of what they used to call vanity presses, and now they prefer the term boutique presses. And because it makes them sound a little better. But, you can pay out the yin-yang, in my opinion, you can pay $8,000 to $15,000 and you have all these beautiful books, and they do a great job. They're beautiful books, but they're all in boxes in your garage and your basement. And their model for their business is they get all that money up front, and there's no marketing on the other end. So you have all these beautiful books, but you better hope you have 15,000 readers, because that's what you just paid for. So there's that option as well. And, luckily, if you're self-published and doing it through Amazon, if you want to order 2 books, you order 2. If you have an event and you need 30, you order 30. And I love that model, and obviously that makes a lot better business sense.
In your bio, Dee Dee, it says essentially that you're loads of laughs and a bunch of love and light. Explain that to our audience, because there is nothing better than to be able to read a book or to watch a show, to see anything that makes you laugh. There is something about the laughter that makes you feel so good. It's like an adrenaline rush. How do you do it?
And thank you for bringing that up. So way back when I started 18 years ago, you kind of look at your writing and you're kind of starting the whole branding element and trying to really figure out, well, who am I and who am I to my readers? And one of the comments I always got from my critique groups and my beta readers way back then was, your books, I was writing romantic comedies is how I started. And they were very kind of Sex and the City meets Urban Cowboy or chick lit on country. And what always those elements always were was there was humor and heart. Always, because I just think that's the most magical combination. Laughter and love are some of the highest frequencies of energy in the world. And I think, we all have so many things in the world. I mean, we're all, praying for so many different things and sending energy and love and light, especially, again, what we just went through in Vegas. And, as a community of the world, and as human beings and creatures of the world, there's nothing that's more healing than love and laughter. So I've always, in all 7 genres I write, even spiritual awakening, my spiritual awakening books, you don't have to be all somber and serious, and, you can laugh and still be spiritual. So, I even include the humor in that. It doesn't have to all be serious and Om and Namaste. Those are beautiful things, but, you can laugh a little in there and have some fun with it. So, for me, that's how I am in life, and, that's what comes from my heart and head and soul when I write.
Deidre, listen to what she's saying. You and I have talked about getting a little laughter in our lives and, feeling good about ourselves and learning how to rely on just ourselves. Now, I'm just curious from your point of view, Deidre, if you were to ask her the question, how do authors reach readers? Because that's the same thing for books, it's the same thing for movies, it's the same thing for theater. How do you, why don't you ask her the question, Deidre, because I think our readers want to hear about it.
This is a great question, because as a published author myself, having gone what Dee Dee describes as the middle road at this point, it is a real challenge for authors now to reach readers because we don't have that corporate America model in place. And yet I want to say up front before I ask this question, to have that attitude of laughter and joy, love and light to lead the way is the way that sends that energy out. And I think it helps us find the way to do what the next question is. How do authors reach readers? In other words, how do today's readers find their books? And that's a double-sided question. And Dee Dee, as someone who's worked both sides of the industry, I'm willing to bet you have a really solid, almost two-sided answer on this, a complete answer because you see it from both perspectives. So how do we authors reach our readers, and how do we help readers find our books?
I think today, because of social media and the internet, right, that's just totally changed the world. And the bottom line is this, and quite frankly, it's something the traditional publishers were never very good at. And it's this idea that people connect with people. When I teach, that's one of my mantras and one of my main ways of reaching, and truly, it's people connect with people. It's that simple. So let me give you some examples how it works as an author. So for me, building up, 1.2 million readers, the way I've done that is because I've connected with them as people first, not readers. And let me tell you what I mean by that. So, for example, on social media, the greatest way we have to connect as a world and a cosmos, and what I'm doing is I have a few things that I do almost every day. Everybody knows I love coffee. I do a first cup of the day toast and cheer to everyone. Everybody knows I love wine, and they all know that I collect bitchy signs. So I have people who literally have connected with me over coffee, wine, and witchy bitchy signs, not because of my books. Then they're like, oh, she's an author. I wonder what she writes because I really like her sense of humor. She's always loving and kind. So, oh, she has books. I'll check those out. It's 9 times out of 10, it's never about the book. It's because you've connected with someone because they have an interest in music or coffee or traveling or pyramids and energy or spiritual awakening, or they love London, they love Paris, they love, anything that you love that you connect with somebody else. Dogs and cats. No greater way to get attention than hashtag dogs of Instagram, cats of Instagram. People connect over what they love. And then the book sales just follow that because they want to, contribute to your world and give back to you because you've given to them.
Just for a second, I'm curious about this. Now, lots of people certainly want to connect. I mean, this is a very human thing, if you will. But you're suggesting it's all on different platforms like Facebook and Instagram and various other social media platforms. Is that am I correct?
Yes, exactly. There's no better way to find your audience than using Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, Ripple and other apps. I mean, it's just we're all driven by what we see on our phones and our tablets. And yes, of course, you're going to meet people in your local coffee shop, in your local communities, and those all work wonderful too. And when you have book signings or events, hopefully they'll come out and support you. But the greatest support that you'll find, remember, it's always the path of least resistance, right? And, you sit on, I'm a psychologist and political scientist by degree, so I've been able to use that a lot in my career. And, the path of least resistance, it's about sitting in your pajamas on your couch, and that's when you connect with people because you're sitting there with that device, and it's easy for everybody, and that's how you connect with people.
Yeah, but Dee Dee, isn't there something wrong with that? Because we used to be very comfortable talking face-to-face. We loved,
Sure.
I mean, I can only speak for myself, but I know my friends say the same, and that is when we talking to somebody face by face, or we, give them a little touch on the shoulder or something to encourage them to do things that maybe they wouldn't do. Isn't that more important than this technological way of selling your books or talking to people on the computer? Something's wrong with that, I feel. I don't know. What do you think about that, too? And I want to know, didn't you remember when you were a kid how fascinating and how wonderful it was to sit in the theater of a show, talk to people, all these different things?
Yeah, of course, and it's a very valid question, and I think it's a huge thing that we're really learning as a society how to adjust. And I totally get where you're coming from. But the interesting thing from the author's point of view, though, is, even, the huge authors of the world, Nora Roberts, Debbie Macomber, Stephen King, James Patterson, we're not in a position very often that we actually ever come face-to-face with our readers. I mean, when you're selling in the millions, of copies like we are, today's world, if anything, gives us that ability to connect with the people that would have had to have waited 3 hours in a book signing line, which, by the way, nobody's doing anymore. But I have readers that truly are closer to me in some cases than, some of my family, because they really are on my social media every day. They toast that first cup of coffee to me. They're in Costa Rica on vacation, and they give D D Scott a cheer out and tell somebody else about the next book. So I know about their children. I know about their grandchildren. I know that they're traveling on a trip. Heck, I've been in cities before on my own travels and met up with some of my fans for coffee because we happened to know we were both in the same town, and of course I'll have a cup of coffee with you. So there's these wonderful moments to actually connect more now with readers because of that than ever before.
Yeah, I understand. Have you experienced the same thing? And do you have another question for Dee Dee?
I think both viewpoints are valid. This is a diplomat in me, of course. Honestly, ladies, both viewpoints are valid. I think we do need that human touch. We do need to be in physical presence. And Dee Dee, your point is well made that you travel to another country or another state and you hook up with your readers there, and that would not have been possible. So I prefer to see it as something we keep in balance, and social media, all of our platforms, helping us expand so we can connect more deeply in a more expanded way.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah, which brings me to the spiritual aspect of us as human beings. And I know from experience that you teach spiritual awakening, and you do include in your teaching elements of that spiritual journey in your writing and your publishing coaching. So what is it about the writing for publication journey that speaks to and transforms every writer's heart, mind, and soul? So, and on all levels, you're saying heart, mind, and soul. I'm saying heart, mind, and soul. What is it about your writing that speaks to and helps transform?
I think, for one, that there's one of, life's greatest lessons or exercises or classes, if you will, in conquering fear is to write a book, right? I mean, not only do you have to figure out how to do it and go through that process and learn the craft and develop yourself and grow and expand your own level of consciousness to do that, fiction or nonfiction, it doesn't matter what you're writing. It's still a piece of you. And you have so much fear you have to go through, especially if you're trying that traditional route where there's so many gatekeepers and so much negativity and really appears to be kind of a hopeless journey. And I think it's that ability. I mean, it's amazing to me when I'm sitting with an author and I'm uploading a book with them for the first time. I've had grown men, very successful in their careers, Fortune 500 careers, have to excuse themselves and go in the bathroom and cry because they are scared to death to hit that publish button, and what if nobody likes it?
That's right.
And, I mean, these men are hyper type A successful, and they're scared to death. So I think the fact that people can believe in you, you can have that supportive group of loving, kind people on that same journey with you and all working together to help each other achieve their dreams. It's that loving kindness. It's that giving and receiving, because there's a lot of both of those in the writing for publication process. It's just truly one of the greatest exercises in beating your fears. That, even as a psychologist, I can't imagine a better, if I was, you were on my couch and I was helping you that way in therapy, I'd be like, let's write a book on this. You want to beat all those things? You want to get out there and get through this and get beyond this? Let's write it. And it's just one of the greatest exercises for that ever.
Dee Dee, excuse me for a second, Deidre. What do you attribute to the fact that J.J. Rollins was such an incredible success, but it took her a long time? This was not an immediate thing. What is it about her books? Aren't they one of the most, shall we say, the most important books on the shelves today?
I think there's two pieces for her. I think one, it's that element that she beat all the odds, and we all cheer for someone who has the ability and the chutzpah, if you will, to do that. And then I think the second element is it goes back to that people connect with people. The worlds that she builds and the characters that she builds appeals to that cosmic connection, if you will, that we all have. We all know that there has to be something more than us on one little planet. And I think she has that unique and beautiful ability to bring some of those worlds alive and truly make us all believe that, wow, there is something more than what we're doing. And what if there's a little magic in it? And what if it's really, truly about energy? And, if you think it can happen, it can happen. What happens if you go beyond the veil and all those barriers? We'd all love to get on that train, right? And, head off to Hogwarts. So I think it's that. I think it's that primal kind of energetic, just, what else is out there besides us? And she made that world come alive for all of us.
Yeah. Well, Deidre, would you agree that writing is just a wonderful thing to do? Even keeping a journal. Many people say a journal is a way to heal because you get everything out. So what do you say about that?
Absolutely. Dee Dee brings up a very valid point. In my own book, my letter to my father, that began with healing my father's relationship and writing the first ever kind letter to him, which I really thought at that moment was part of my personal journal. It's now published as a book. And so this idea of putting yourself on paper and having the courage to press that publish button is indeed huge. And as I've gotten to know Dee Dee and how you work with people to coach them through. I mean, my next question to you would be if you could offer just one piece of advice to someone who's on the writing for publication journey. What would that piece of advice be?
I think it would be to know that you're not alone, that you have everything you need at your fingertips. There's loving, kind people available, whether it's me or someone else, that would be honored to walk you through that journey, and that you've got this. That's one of the biggest things that sometimes I think may sound like a broken record when I'm coaching someone, but, it's about somebody believing in you, because sometimes when you're at that point you don't believe in yourself and you don't have that positive feedback yet, and you have all these unknowns and nothing concrete to kind of hang on to. And I think when you get into that world of self-published authors and you see the support and the love and the kindness, and that we're truly all cheering each other on, helping us with cover design, formatting, editing, whatever it might be, you're not alone. And there's a wonderful community of readers just waiting for your book. One of the things everybody always tells me is, but what if that idea has already been done? And, it doesn't matter what spiritual proclivity you are. They've all been done, right? We're all pulling stuff out of the same ether. So chances are, yep, it's already been done.
So, Dee Dee, if people want to talk to you, if they want to learn a little bit more about your books, and if they want to actually buy your books, how do they do that?
Sure. All of my books are available now exclusively to Amazon. So Amazon.com for sure. And then also there's a complete listing of them on my online home, which is www.letloveglow.com.
Okay. Well, do you have a last question, Deidre, for Dee Dee before we end this show?
Oh, well, thank you for asking me to do that. What, Dee Dee, do you see in the future for publishing, for the publishing industry, and how will that affect authors and writers? In other words, what can we look forward to in the author world?
I think the most exciting thing is that content is king and authenticity is queen right now. And what I mean by that is we have the unique ability because of technology that all ideas and all aspects and all stories now have a way to reach readers. And I think if you can authentically and just real from your heart, your soul, and your mind tell that story, you can reach readers around the planet, and I'll say off planet, and in ways that we never could before. And I think you just go for it and you'll find your tribe.
Exciting. So exciting.
Yes.
Well,
my guest today has been Dee Dee Scott. She's an international best-selling author and writing and publishing coach, and boy, did she have a lot to say. And my co-host, I want to thank you, Deidre Regal, for being just a great co-host. So hopefully we'll get together with you again, Dee Dee, because, boy, do you have to share. Okay. Thank you very much.
My honor.
Likewise.
Thank you for listening to The Susan Brender Show. To be a guest, email sebrender@yahoo.com.